Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the Railway. Today I'm reviewing another Bachmann Thomas & Friends engine in N-scale. The other week I did my first ever N-scale Thomas review. I looked at Thomas, and if you'd like to see that review, I'll pop the link up there. Now I didn't go into that review expecting too much because Bachmann's 00 version of Thomas is just okay. You know, he looks pretty good, but his face is a bit meh and his mechanism is very meh. But the N-scale version was just absolutely incredible. To say I was impressed by it was an understatement. It looked just the job, exactly like Thomas in the show. The face, as far as I'm concerned anyway, was absolutely perfect, and the mechanism was just outstanding, miles better than the 00 version. And in fact, the performance of that Thomas model, I think, was the best of any N-scale loco I've ever seen running. So needless to say, I'm back for more, and because it's December, I've decided to review one of the most festive looking Thomas characters, and that of course is James in his splendid red paint job. And I'm hoping that Bachmann have done just as good a job on James, because if they have, again, this should knock the socks off the 00 or HO version. Now James is a lot more expensive than Thomas, as you might expect. At his full price he costs £140.75 from Bachmann, and at the retailers he's about £120. And if you'd like to pick one of these up, I will include an affiliate link down in the description. Once again though, I found it cheaper to buy this from Totally Thomas, so this is not the UK release of James, this is an American import, and by doing it that way I actually got this for £5 less. It's weird, but that's just how it works out. But anyway, the Bachmann James, he looks great through the front of the box here, but I'm really interested to see how good he actually is. So join me, let's take a look at Bachmann's James in N-scale. Alright, so first impressions, yeah, once again he looks really good. Through the front of the box he looks spot on as far as I'm concerned, but today I'm going to have a really close look at this. We're going to really focus on every little detail and I'll properly show you what this is like. So we'll get started on that in just a second. Let me show you the end of the box. So this is James, the red engine, yeah, duh. And it's item number 58793, so that's what you need to look up, at least if you want the American version of James. But with that, I think it's time to open up the box and we'll take our first look. Really hoping this has received the same treatment as the Bachmann Thomas in N-scale. Yeah, fingers crossed. Right, let me try and get this out, because, oh goodness me, what have we got here? A full colour combined Bachmann & Williams catalogue, over 300 pages, digest size. Well, I consumed the last one of these because it said it was digest size, and then my teeth hurt for the rest of the week, funnily enough, because I'd, you know, chewed card. So obviously I'm not going to do that again this week. What I actually need to do is tear it up into smaller chunks to make it even more digestible. It's not good. Don't do this at home. Ah, excellent. Yes, hopefully this review will not be followed by another trip to the dentist. Okay, let's see what we've got in here then. Is this James's instructions rolled up once again? Let's see if we can learn more about the mechanism. Okay, here we go. Break-in period. It starts like any fine piece of machinery. I'm sure James would approve of that wording. But yeah, it needs to be broken in, troubleshooting tips, lubrication and maintenance, that's all generic. Aha, here we have it. Right, so yeah, this does seem to be very similar to Thomas. Apparently no moving eye mechanism. I'm fond of that decision. A cordless motor, yet again, looks to be more or less the same motor as in Thomas, and it worked great in Thomas, so hopefully it will here too. And we've got the same kind of pickup arrangement by the looks of it, wiper pickups. I'll show you all this a little bit later on. For now though, I think that's it. I don't see any accessories or anything. This other one will just be about warranty, so I'm not going to put you all into a stupor by looking at that. So let's take our first look, and it looks as though the loco and tender, or sorry, James and his tender, you're not a loco, are you, James, are disconnected. So let's take a look at the tender first. which is a very, very small vehicle. So here it is, yeah, very, very lightweight this. Not a lot to it, but it's unmistakably James's tender, and I think it looks pretty cool with the little N-gauge coupling on it as well. Some very decent detailing on it as well though. And of course James costs about £30 more than Thomas, so if the locos are about the same price, then we're looking at about 30 quid for this tender. So yeah, it's expensive, but it does seem to have been done well. Right, pop that down for a second. Let's take a look at James then, who looks really cool. All right, here he is then. This is James, and yeah, there's a fair bit of weight to James, I would say. He's not striking me as amazingly heavy as the Thomas model did, but I do think he'll be perfectly able to haul a decent train. And let's do a face reveal then. Yeah, again, that is a pretty darn good face, isn't it? Let's do a bit of a comparison between this and the 00 face. Yeah, I mean, the 00 face looks much cheekier. Yeah, he looks much more mischievous. But if you really compare this with how James looks in the show, yeah, the 001 doesn't really look that much like James. I think once again, the N-scale version is a much, much better likeness. So yeah, once again, I would say a better face. And of course, the fact that he's not got moving eyes also makes him a little bit more accurate. So let me hold the tender with him. Yes, great. It looks really, really good once again. The quality seems to be high, made of plastic, at least the body is once again, although there will be a fair bit of metal inside on the chassis if Thomas was anything to go by. But anyway, a little bit of background on James, and then we'll take a much, much closer look at him. James was built way back in 1912 as a member of the L&YR Class 28, which was actually an 060 locomotive, not a 260 as James is. And as much as James hates doing goods work, the L&YR Class 28 was actually a goods locomotive. He was built by George Hughes, who sold him to Sir Topham Hatt in 1924 for mixed traffic duties on the island of Sodor. He was originally painted black, but eventually was repainted into red after he derailed and had to be repaired. He also had 2 more wheels fitted to his front, and he was used for passenger work on Sodor most of the time, although sometimes he did goods as well. James is pretty vain and boastful in the show, and is extremely proud of his splendid red paintwork, rightly so. He's also a bit intolerant of other engines that aren't as clean, fast or modern as he is. This means he sees many other engines as his rivals. James is now over 110 years old, but he still continues in service to this day. So there you have it, a close look at James in N-scale. And once again, I think this is miles better than the 00 version of James by Bachmann. It's crazy, but honestly, it's true, except for the weight. I'm a bit disappointed by how lightweight James is. So with his tender, he is heavier than Thomas. He weighs 36.8 grams, whereas Thomas was 30 grams. So yeah, he's heavier. But if you take the tender out of the equation and just look at James himself, James is actually lighter than Thomas by about a gram. Now that's not what you'd expect because James is much larger than Thomas, but for whatever reason, they haven't been able to make James as heavy as Thomas. And when you add in the fact that there's going to be extra drag from his tender and his non-driven wheels, that means James is going to be quite a bit weaker than Thomas. That's weird. And you know, he's £30 more expensive than Thomas, so it is a shame that James is weaker and lighter than Thomas for £30 more. That's a bit confusing. Otherwise though, yeah, they've done a fantastic job of this. He looks spot on, and like I say, he's quite a lot better than the 00 scale version of James. So first, let's talk about the decoration and paintwork. This has been done better than in 00. Look, the area beneath James's smoke box has been painted black, as is correct. On my 00 version, that was left red. I think Bachmann might have fixed that later on, but this looks better than my 001, for example. Look also at James's handrails. Look how precisely these have been painted. On the 001, there's kind of overspray. They're not that neat. The one on the N-gauge version is just perfect. It looks brilliant. Also, look at the great shiny finish on James's dome here. This looks great. On the 001, it's much duller looking. I think this is miles better. And the other thing that I think is much better than on the 00 version is James's cab. Look at this, he's got a real cab space, which means his front-facing windows, they're not just black squares that you can't see through, they really do lead through into the cab, so he's much more realistic. Look at the 00 version of James. Yeah, it's just a totally blocked-in cab, not very good at all. This looks miles better. And up on top of the cab he's got his whistle, which isn't separate or anything, it wasn't even separate on the 00 one, that's just moulded on and then painted. He's got lining on his boiler, which has been done very precisely, his splashers are lined of course, and the side of his cab is lined too. Very lovely finish on him as well, great bit of shine to him, and a very rich red colour, as I'm sure James is very pleased to see. And on the side of his tender we've got more lining as well of course, and his number, which is 5. Top of his running plate is painted grey, as is the case with most Thomas & Friends models. This area underneath the smoke box though, where the red's been picked out, that looks a little bit messy. And also the buffer beam hasn't been that well painted either, bit of straight black paint on there, so quality, again, maybe not quite as good as on Thomas. And here is his face, which has been very precisely printed. Close look at it for you. Yeah, I think they've done a really good job of this. Comment down below, let me know what you think, but I would say this is a better face than in 00. One thing, once again, that I don't really like is the wheels. So these are disc wheels, so again, we haven't got real gaps between the spokes, but more than that, I think the wheels just look a bit too silvery. James's wheels usually look quite a bit darker than this, so I reckon these would have looked better if they'd been blackened. The coupling rods are much lighter in colour though, which is correct, so I'm glad that they got that little detail right. They are a little bit chunky looking of course, but really not too bad. And the real shame is that his front pony wheels here do have real spokes on them, as do the tender wheels, so the driving wheels do kind of stand out a little bit. Anyway, his buffers are very nice and fine, they look great, and we've got the separately fitted lamp irons on the front of the buffer beam. No lamp pre-fitted on this James though, I believe the 001 did have a lamp, but no massive deal, I don't think. Here's a quick look at his tender. The front of the tender is nice and realistic, there is a bit of space for the crew there. He's got his coal load of course, which looks nice and realistic. And around the back we've got more buffers. We've got his little vacuum pipe here, which again is a very tiny separately fitted part. And of course the N-gauge couplings. So we've got one on the back and one on the front. 00 James, at least the one I've got, does not have a front coupling, which limits him quite a bit, I think. This has got one, so that's yet another reason why this James is better than in 00. So yeah, I think he looks better than in 00, but does he run as well? What's his mechanism like? Is he going to last for years? Is he reliable? Well, let's get him down onto the track and let's find out. So there's James down onto the track looking absolutely splendid. Now, I have filmed his first performance test and I'll show you how that went in just a second. After that though, I took him apart to see what the quality of his mechanism was like, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. So in terms of the mechanism, I would say he's pretty much the same as Thomas. And so for me that makes James not quite as good as Thomas, because of course James has got a tender, and that tender could have been an opportunity to make James better than Thomas, but that opportunity was missed. So the loco to tender drawbar is just like the 001, so it's just a peg with a drawbar, no electrical connection between the two whatsoever. That means James has got no tender pickups, unfortunately. Yeah, I think that's a shame. Now, to be fair, Thomas ran absolutely fine without tender pickups, but Bachmann had no choice on that front because Thomas doesn't have a tender. But James does have a tender, and some extra pickups, maybe through the axles on here, could have doubled the number of pickups that James has got, which would have helped him run well even once his wheels are dirty. So that's a bit of a missed opportunity. Also, obviously, the fact that the tender's not connected means that we don't have a DCC socket here. The tender would have been a great place to put a DCC socket to make him digital ready, but again, that was a missed opportunity. Now, he doesn't need DCC ready, he doesn't necessarily need tender pickups, but then let's not kid ourselves that this is a £140 model. I think when it costs that much, or 120 odd pounds at the retailers, he should really have had every possible feature, so that's a little bit disappointing. James himself though is brilliantly done. So to take a look at his pickups, I'm taking the base keeper plate off, which is held on with 3 screws. And look at this, we've got proper bearings, just like Thomas did. Again, this is better than Bachmann's 00 or HO James. Great to see bearings here. We've got a single driven axle, this time it's the frontmost one. And as you can see, we've got a brass gear on here too. Again, great quality. And if I pull some of the wheels out, you can see we've got wiper pickups touching each of James's driving wheels. So all of his drivers do pick up, but that does mean that only 6 out of 14 wheels on this model actually pick up. That's less than half. I think that could have been better. Body removal is pretty easy with James, much more so than on Thomas, I would say. So 2 screws at the back, 1 screw at the front, and the body lifts off very nice and easily. And here's the chassis. It's a nicely designed chassis, pretty simple as well. So we've got a high quality coreless motor here, which I think is probably the same one as in Thomas, although it's mounted a little differently. And look, it's even got a flywheel incorporated into the worm drive. And this is the second N-Gage Thomas loco that I've seen with a flywheel. So impressive to see Bachmann put such quality features into these models. It means that they're not toys, they're kind of more serious models, which is great to see. This is not a DCC socket in the loco though, so yeah, this is not a DCC ready loco. I have known N-Gage models be DCC ready, so it is a pity that this one is not. And then in terms of weight, the inside of the body is packed with weight, so there's definitely been some attempt to make this heavier. Obviously though, James is still lighter than Thomas, so I think really a bit of a die-cast body, maybe a die-cast boiler or something like that, would have really helped him weigh a little bit more. And then finally, the gauging back-to-back came in at 7.4mm quite reliably, so he matches most other locos that I've got. So yeah, overall a great quality mechanism, almost exactly the same as Thomas, but I do think because James has got a tender, more could be made of that tender to improve his performance even more and to make sure that he's still working nicely even once the track and wheels have gotten a bit dirty. But anyway, this is not to say that James is a bad performer by any means whatsoever, so let's jump back in time and let me show you how his first run went. Alright, so James has got a lot to live up to here because of course Thomas was perfect. So hopefully James will be as well. Of course at this point he's not been running, so I will let him run in fully before sort of casting any judgments. But how does he run right out of the box? This is his first ever run. Let's give him a little test. Here we go. Oh yes. That was very much the way Thomas ran to start with. Also known as perfectly. There he goes over the points. Once again, perfectly. It's shaping up in very much the same way, isn't it? Oh, look at that. Oh, he just looks so good. So the extra complication of the tender and the front pony wheels doesn't seem to have affected anything really, at least not here on the straight and the start of the curve. I'll try him over the points and such in a little while. Oh, he's just delightful. Once again, a gorgeous, gorgeous performer. Sorry, James, was that a bit of flattery for you there? Didn't ought to say too much of that because it's going to boost his ego even more, isn't it? But yeah, that is mind-blowingly good. I'll give you that one, James. Right, 50% speed then. Let me show you what his gearing's like. Pretty smart. Yeah, this is really good. It's not too fast. A lot of N and 009 goes super fast. I always say this. These Thomas models, not so much. So they're sensibly geared. Right, is there any torque in his mechanism? I should think so, but let's see. Yep, look at that. No problem. Up to 50, yeah. Massively powerful as well. Great. Okay, one more thing to try before I run him in. What's his crawl like straight out of the box? Ready, James? Here we go. This is ready for when he's hauling that goods train later on. Spoiler alert, James. He's probably going to misbehave now. Okay, there we go. Look at that. That is astonishing for N scale. Again, this and Thomas, the best N-Gage crawlers I've got. Smooth acceleration. Wow. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. Oh, no. Well, technically I didn't have to help him. He did cut out on the curve there. But yeah, to say he's not got tender pickups, He's running quite reliably. I think tender pickups would still have been a bit better. Probably not wiper ones, probably axle-based ones so that there's no friction. I think that would have been nice, but yeah, I can't really fault the way he's running. He's only cut out once, and that's before he's been run in. So yeah, overall, I think this is looking really, really positive. So with that, let's fully run him in. Here we go. I can tell already that he's just going to be an amazing runner after running in. I mean, he already is. So that's 2 out of 2. 2 Bachmann N-Gage Thomas models that are absolutely incredible performers. Better than basically every other N-Gage loco that I've got. Incredible. I don't know how they did it. I don't know why they chose to make the mechanisms and the performance so good in these Thomas models of all things. But I'm really, really glad because it makes a massive difference. Alright, so I'll keep him running 30 minutes forwards, 30 minutes backwards, then we'll come back and I'll couple him up to a bit of a train and I'll let him meet Thomas, I think, for the first time. Alright folks, I'm back and I cut the power there and you can see that he didn't just stop dead. That's because he's got a flywheel. Really, really good quality. So, just like Thomas, not one issue as James ran. Perfect, perfect performance. So beautiful and smooth, no cutting out, no derailments. Even despite that sort of loose pony wheel at the front flapping around, it stayed on the track all the time. So brilliantly designed, very reliable. You could literally leave him running all day and I think he'd be fine. Just look at that. So let me test that crawl again. I don't think it's going to be any better because it couldn't possibly be better. Hopefully it's no worse, and I'm sure not because Thomas is still a great crawler, even after all I've run him. So let me ease him up gently. Look at that. It's just amazing. So I have criticised James for not having tender pickups, but I have to say the pickups he has got are marvellously reliable. And I suppose as long as you clean them and keep them that way, he should still be a great runner forever, really, as far as I can tell. But obviously, yeah, because he's not got tender pickups, you are going to want to keep these wheels cleaner than you otherwise would have to. But yeah, that slow speed is just amazing. And the great thing about these is their ability to smoothly accelerate. Thomas was the same, but look at this. It's just great. So, so good. So, an amazing performer yet again, just like Thomas was. Right, let me back him up and let me just test him on the points for you. Okay, let's open up these points, and I'm not going to go too slow because I don't want to make it too easy for him. So here we go. Up, wrong way. Oh, goodness me, James. I'll blame James. There you go, that was 50%, no problems. What about in reverse? I think forwards is harder for James because of his pony wheel, so let's go a bit faster. Well, that was full speed. Did Thomas come off at full speed? I think he did. Well, James isn't, so he's even better over points. All right, amazing. Cool, nice work, James. So, I've set up some rolling stock for James. Yes, it's goods rolling stock, just to keep with the spirit of the LMYR Class 28, I think. So, James is not going to enjoy it, but here he goes. Let's see if we can couple up to it. Okay, here we go. Oh, wrong way yet again. And yes, I am trying this again on a curve. Okay, normally this doesn't work. I don't think it has. I also normally give an engine 2 tries, so I think for James's second try, I'm going to hit this a bit harder, see if that works. Because these trucks are rather troublesome. Right, bit of a run up then, James. Ready? I'll go hit him about 50%. Ah, has it done it? Oh, he's done it. So it does work on a curve then, you just need to give him a bit of a belt. There we go, moving them very, very easily. Okay, so as promised on the other line, I've got Thomas, who, like James, is just a joy to run. And if you haven't seen that review, I will link to it now. Oh, he's itching to get going. Here we go then. Thomas with Annie and Clarabelle. So there he goes then, there goes James, and what can I say? Well, he cost a fortune. I'm not entirely convinced that he was worth £120, much less £140, but you can't deny that he looks great. He looks better than the 001 yet again, I think. Brilliant face, great likeness to James. runs marvellously, and the mechanism is built to last. Yes, it could have had a few more features, but at the end of the day, it's got the quality bearings, it's got the quality motor. He has been built to last, and he's also quite serviceable as well. This is a lot more expensive than the 00 James, but honestly, if you were trying to choose between the 00 Thomas & Friends range or the N-Gauge one, and you hadn't already got a layout or any track set up and you were starting from scratch, I think honestly, from what I've seen so far, I would say go N-Gauge. Yes, the models are a bit more expensive, but they are just better. They look better and they're built better as well. Wasn't expecting that to be the case when I first started buying these, but it does seem to be. I don't know, do you lot think that's true as well? It really does strike me as being the case. Oh, so enjoyable. So there you have it, James, running beautifully, couplings perfectly functional, and a decent amount of weight, not as much as Thomas, but decent enough so that he can haul a fair amount of rolling stock. Let's have some ratings then for Bachmann's N-Scale James. And I still think this is a really good model, certainly better than the 00 scale version of James, I reckon, but not quite as good as Thomas. So the level of detail I've given 4-star. Obviously he's a great representation of James. He looks just like him, the face is spot on, the paint, all the colours, that all looks great. He just doesn't get 5-star because the wheels don't look quite right. We've got the disc wheels and they haven't been blackened, so they're a kind of silvery colour, and the driving wheels also don't match the tender wheels and the front pony wheels because they are the proper spoked wheels, so not too keen on that. He's also missing his lamp, which he usually has over on the left hand side, so I'm not going to give him 5-star on detail, but on the whole he does look fantastic. Performance though, once again, I just can't fault him. He's amazingly reliable, especially considering he's not got tender pickups. That's really something. Crawls brilliantly, handles the points without a problem, can pull his rolling stock without any issues either. Oh, he's just a total 5-star, very easy score. Pulling power I can't measure, unfortunately, but as we saw from my finger test, he's got loads of torque. He's not dead light, he's a little lighter than Thomas, but he's still reasonably heavy, so he's going to be able to haul a decent amount of rolling stock. No real issue with pulling power. Mechanism, I've given a middle of the road 3.5-star, not quite as good as Thomas because obviously he's got a tender, and that tender was an opportunity to improve the mechanism. Unfortunately there are no tender pickups and there's no DCC socket, despite there being a good space for one inside the tender. On the plus side though, we do have the proper bearings on the driving wheels. We do have 6 pickups on this loco on each of the drivers, so that's not too bad. We've got the brass gear, which is great. We've got the bearings, very high quality coreless motor, and a flywheel. Amazing how these Thomas N-Gauge models all seem to have flywheels. So very impressive, but could have been a little better, I think. Similarly, quality is just a middle of the road 3-star for me. The build quality on the whole is really good. No real wonky parts, I don't think, but he is lighter than Thomas. He does have a plasticky body. I think a die-cast boiler or some sort of metal bodywork would have really helped him to weigh even more and be worth £140.75, which is the full price. Also, paint a little bit messy in some areas, mainly the front buffer beam. Can't give him a high quality score looking like that, but on the whole I think the quality is okay, and if you get a better example than mine, then possibly it would be even better still. Value for money then is where this starts to get a little bit silly. Now, I was quite lenient on Thomas because obviously he was excellent, really well built, dead heavy, fantastic, all of this stuff. Well, James is really no better. In fact, in some areas he's a little bit worse. And yet he costs £30 more than Thomas, which was an already pretty high price. £30 more, and what do you get? Well, you get a lighter loco plus a 7-gram tender, which doesn't have pickups and doesn't have a DCC socket. So I think £140.75 is ridiculously expensive for this. At the retailers you're talking more like £120, but that's still a heck of a lot of money, isn't it? I think if it was going to cost that much, it really needed to have every possible feature, and it shouldn't be missing quality of life features such as tender pickups and such. So I'm not giving it a great score on value because I think we've seen much better models than this at this kind of price. However, he has been done really well, the quality is certainly okay, and the performance is amazing. So make of that what you will. Overall, that is 6.95 out of 10, or a grade of E, which does seem quite harsh. And don't get me wrong, this is still an excellent model, it's just very pricey and not quite as good as Thomas. And given how much this cost, I think I do need to be quite harsh on it. So into the logbook he goes, and to be fair, he's still ranking pretty well among the other N-Gage locos. That's 5th place, above the Dapol A4 and below the Dapol Class 142. So overall, I think James is a really solid model. If you're interested in one of these, I can highly recommend it. Perhaps not as much as Thomas, but I suppose most people will be going for Thomas first, unless you're a massive James fan, of course. But yeah, if you really want a James, there's nothing wrong with this. There's no major reason why I wouldn't recommend this, apart from the high price. So what I would say is shop around, try and find the best price you can. Toutley Thomas is a good shout. Certainly don't pay 140 odd pounds for this, because it's just too much to pay for something like this, I think. But otherwise, yeah, great job by Bachmann yet again. I mean, the most important parts of the model are here, aren't they? He looks great and he runs well. So at least the basics are right, and I have thoroughly enjoyed running this as well. So thank you so much for watching. Comment down below, let me know what you think. Have I been too harsh? I have been quite harsh, I think, but not too harsh in my opinion. And I'll see you again very, very soon for another review. Also, let me know which other Thomas and Friends characters you'd like me to look at in N-Gage, and I will see what I can do. For now though, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you very, very soon. Alright, cheers everybody, you take care.